Have you ever felt like you're falling behind in life, even though you were always told you'd be ahead? You were the smart one, the gifted kid, the one who figured things out faster, got praised by teachers, admired by classmates, and held to higher expectations. Everyone assumed you'd be successful. How could you not be? You were always the sharpest person in the room. But now, something doesn't feel right. You've hit adulthood, and suddenly, all that brilliance seems useless. You struggle to stay motivated. You avoid starting things because you fear you won't finish. You're socially anxious, emotionally distant, and can't explain why. On the outside, everything might still look okay. You're still capable, still quick thinking, but inside, there's a gnawing emptiness. A quiet sense that life is passing by and you're not really part of it. Sound familiar? You're not alone. And you're not broken. What's happening isn't a failure. It's a pattern. A survival strategy from childhood that no longer works. Let's go back for a moment. When we're young, our identities are simple. We pick one or two traits. I like dinosaurs. Or, I'm good at math. And we build our entire sense of self around them. It's natural. Kids aren't supposed to be complex. But one of the most powerful identities a child can be given is this: you're smart. And that phrase sticks. It's repeated by parents, reinforced by teachers, echoed by peers. It becomes more than a compliment. It becomes a core identity. Being smart feels amazing as a kid. It means less studying, faster results, more praise. You stand out without even trying. Life feels like easy mode. And so you start to associate success with one thing: ease. But here's the trap. You aren't praised for working hard. You are praised for not having to. For getting things right on the first try. For being quick, effortless, brilliant. And so, somewhere deep inside, a dangerous belief begins to form. If I'm really smart, things should come easy to me. And that belief is poison. Because the moment something isn't easy, as life inevitably becomes, you don't just feel challenged. You feel exposed. If smart equals easy, then hard equals failure. And if you're struggling, does that mean you're not smart anymore? To protect yourself, you start shrinking. You don't raise your hand unless you're 100% sure. You don't try new hobbies unless you're guaranteed to be good. You don't speak up unless your words feel perfectly rehearsed. You don't even let yourself get excited about something unless you're sure you'll master it. You stop doing things you might love, because loving something doesn't guarantee you'll be good at it. And being bad at something? That's unthinkable. It threatens the identity you've spent your whole life protecting. And so your world begins to shrink. You stay in your comfort zone, always playing to your strengths. You avoid risk, avoid failure, avoid vulnerability. You protect the image. The perfect smart kid. Polished, capable, impressive. But while you're busy protecting your ego, something heartbreaking starts happening outside your bubble. Everyone else is growing. They're failing, sure, but through those failures, they're learning, adapting, developing grit, making friends, discovering themselves. While you're stuck in a loop of perfection and hesitation, the rest of the world is moving forward without you. And the worst part? You know it. You feel it. That nagging sense of falling behind, even when no one else sees it. That subtle panic that everyone else knows some secret to adulthood that you somehow missed. And the more behind you feel, the more you withdraw. You think, maybe if I just wait, I'll figure it out. Maybe I just need one more book, one more breakthrough, one more plan. But that moment never comes. And so the loneliness sets in, not because you're incapable of connection, but because you've spent so long building a fortress around your identity that now you don't know how to step out of it. When you stop growing, you also stop connecting. Think about it. Real connection doesn't happen when everything is smooth and polished. It happens when you're in it, when you're part of a team, struggling through a group project, laughing awkwardly at your own mistakes, failing at something in front of others, and still showing up. Those messy, vulnerable moments are where human bonds are forged. But when you're the kid who avoids difficulty, you miss those moments. You don't join the club because you're afraid you'll embarrass yourself. You don't play the sport because you've never done it before. You avoid the team assignment because other people's chaos feels like a threat to your control. And so, little by little, you remove yourself from the flow of social life. But here's the thing. Just because you stop participating doesn't mean you stop needing connection. You're still human. You still long to be seen, to belong, to share the invisible weight you carry with someone who gets it. But without shared experiences, without vulnerability, without mutual effort, connection becomes something you observe rather than something you feel. So you do what you're good at, you analyze. Instead of relating to people, you study them. You read facial expressions. You predict behavior. You prepare responses. You run conversations like mental simulations, always pre-calculating the perfect thing to say. It's not that you lack empathy. In fact, you probably have plenty of it, but it's the cognitive kind. You can understand why someone's sad. You can list their possible emotions like variables in an equation. You might even give really good advice. But here's the problem. Understanding isn't the same as feeling. Cognitive empathy allows you to intellectually track someone's emotional state without ever joining them in it. You're always one step removed, like watching a movie with the sound turned off. And on the surface, you might seem totally normal. You can hold a conversation. You make people laugh. You're articulate, thoughtful, maybe even charming. But under the surface, you're exhausted. Because every social interaction feels like a performance. A constant mental load. You're not with people, you're managing them. You're curating responses. Editing expressions. Monitoring tone. Making sure nothing slips through that might make you look foolish or needy or, God forbid, wrong. So eventually, even hanging out becomes work. And because you don't want to fail socially, you start avoiding it entirely. And that's when the loneliness gets louder. It's no longer just about feeling disconnected from people. Now you feel disconnected from yourself, from the part of you that longs for messiness, for spontaneity, for real emotion. But every time that part of you tries to speak, your inner critic silences it with logic. You tell yourself, people just don't get me. I'm fine on my own. It's better to be misunderstood than to look desperate. It's not loneliness. I just have high standards. And maybe you even believe that, for a while. Because let's face it, it's easier to pretend you don't need people than to admit you've forgotten how to connect. So you turn inward. And you do what smart people do best. You try to solve the problem with your brain. You start writing thought loops in your journal. Why do I feel this way? You build psychological frameworks to diagnose yourself. You watch videos. Read studies. Quote neuroscience. You create logical arguments to talk yourself out of your sadness. But here's the twist no one warned you about. Your intellect can't heal your heart. It wasn't designed for that. Intelligence is for solving external problems, math problems, strategy, logistics. But emotional pain? That's not a riddle to solve. It's a wound to feel. And when you try to fix your aching heart with logic, you end up gaslighting yourself. You write convincing reasons for why you should feel fine, but you don't. and the dissonance grows. Now, not only do you feel bad, you feel ashamed for feeling bad. You think, I'm smart. I should know better. You believe there must be something wrong with you if you can't outthink your own sadness. So you retreat deeper. You stop sharing. You stop trying. You stop trusting people with your truth. Because somewhere along the line, you learn that showing your pain is weak. And if you're not impressive, you're unworthy. And so, a new belief forms. One that feels like armor but is actually a cage. I'm just different from everyone else. At first, it sounds empowering. You tell yourself, I'm not lonely, I'm evolved. I don't relate to others because they're shallow. I'm not broken, I'm just complex. But let's be honest. That story isn't built on confidence. It's built on pain. It's built on years of feeling out of sync and not knowing why. Of trying to belong and failing. Of being told you're special, only to realize you don't know how to feel like a person anymore. This isn't arrogance. It's defensive isolation. And it's one of the most heartbreaking traps a smart mind can fall into. Because the wall you built to protect your worth is now the very thing keeping love out. So how do we fix this? How do we go from living in our heads, isolated and overly cautious, to actually feeling present, connected, and free? The answer isn't about becoming less smart. It's about no longer being trapped by the identity of the smart one. Because that identity, while it once gave you comfort and belonging, is now costing you your peace. Let's be very clear, intelligence is not the problem. Your sharp mind, your ability to think deeply, analyze, create patterns, that's still part of you, and it's valuable. But the moment your self-worth becomes tied to always appearing intelligent, you've entered dangerous territory. Why? Because now, your value depends on performance, on being right, on being impressive. And if you only feel worthy when you're winning, you'll start avoiding everything that feels uncertain. You won't try unless you're guaranteed to succeed. You won't speak unless you're sure your words are brilliant. You won't explore unless the path is clear and prestigious. You'll trade growth for safety, curiosity for control, aliveness for reputation. And eventually, the illusion shatters. Because no one, no matter how gifted, can outrun the messiness of being human. So the only way out is this. You let go. You let go of the smart kid persona, not because it was false, but because it's incomplete. You stop chasing admiration and start chasing authenticity. You stop trying to be the exception and start trying to be real. Instead of asking, will this make me look intelligent? You begin asking, will this help me grow? Instead of avoiding failure, you embrace it. You allow yourself to try things and be bad at them. You take the dance class and mess up the steps. You write something mediocre and post it anyway. You enter the conversation not knowing if you'll say the right thing. Because true confidence doesn't come from always succeeding. It comes from knowing you'll survive when you don't. That's what emotional maturity looks like. Not perfection, but resilience. Yes, it feels awkward at first. You'll feel like you're regressing, like you're breaking something sacred. But that discomfort isn't a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're doing something new. For so long, your inner voice said, be careful. Stay sharp. Don't mess this up. Now it starts whispering something different. It's okay to stumble. You're allowed to not know. Keep going. Because here's the truth. The smartest version of you isn't the one who knows all the answers. It's the one who keeps showing up, even when the answers don't come easy. It's the you who's willing to admit confusion, to stay curious, to risk looking foolish in service of something real. You stop performing and start participating. You stop protecting your image and start protecting your inner world. And slowly, something begins to shift. You start feeling less hollow, less exhausted. You stop running mental calculations at every interaction. You stop watching life like a spectator and start stepping into it, even if you stumble. Your identity transforms. You're no longer the one who must always succeed. You're now the one who's not afraid to evolve. And this shift, it changes everything. You begin to realize that being human is not a downgrade from being special. It's the upgrade you never knew you needed. Because the old identity told you your worth depends on being exceptional. But the new identity whispers something softer and far more liberating. Your worth is already here. You just forgot how to feel it. So where do you go from here? What do you do if you spent your whole life being the smart one, only to realize you don't know how to just be? You start here. You stop trying to be impressive. You stop trying to be the person who always has it together. You stop striving to be the most prepared, most polished, most insightful voice in the room. Instead, you start showing up as you are. Even if that means showing up anxious. Even if that means you're unsure of what to say. Even if you feel awkward, or behind, or deeply imperfect. Because the truth is, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room to belong in it. You just need to be someone who's willing to be seen. Connection doesn't come from being flawless. It comes from being present. It comes from sharing the part of you that isn't quite figured out yet. From letting people see the cracks, the gaps, the questions you're still holding. That's where the real you lives, and that's who the world is waiting to meet. And you know what's wild? When you finally drop the performance, when you step off the pedestal and stop trying to prove your worth, something magical happens. People come closer. Because now they see you, not the mask, not the projection, but the human underneath. And when people connect with the real you, not the impressive version, but the honest one, that's when you feel something you've been missing for years. Belonging. Not admiration. Not validation. Belonging. And it hits you all at once. You never had to earn it. You just had to stop hiding. This is where healing begins. When you choose connection over performance. When you risk being misunderstood so you can be truly known. When you stop trying to win the game and start living the life. And yes, it's terrifying. You'll feel exposed, vulnerable, unarmed. But you'll also feel alive in a way that perfection never allowed. Because perfection is a cage. Authenticity is the door. And now, you have the key. So if any part of this message spoke to you, if you saw yourself in these words, if something inside you whispered, "That's me," then let this be your invitation to step forward. Even if you don't have it all figured out. Even if you've been hiding for years. Even if your inner critic is still shouting that you'll mess it all up. Step forward anyway. Not as the smartest person in the room, but as someone who's finally ready to live in it. Because that's where the real joy is. Not in being seen as special, but in being seen, period. Not in being admired from a distance, but in being held close. Not in being above it all, but in being part of it. And maybe, just maybe, that's what you were always searching for. Not another gold star. Not another compliment. But connection. Real, raw, human connection. The kind that doesn't care how perfect you are. Only that you showed up. So here's the question. Will you? Will you let go of the story that says your worth is tied to being exceptional? Will you let yourself be messy, uncertain, and beautifully human? Will you finally trade smart for whole? Because the moment you do, Not only will you find yourself, you'll find that you were never as alone as you thought.